Well, a very big welcome in the studio now to Conall Cassidy from Harcourts Launceston, the REIT Senior Auctioneer of the Year. Congratulations to you on that award. How special, given you only started in the industry back in 2019?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. It's a pretty nice achievement. There's a fair bit of work that goes into these competitions. You know, it's year on year, you're trying to get better at it. And there was some pretty fierce competition from some established agents all across the state. So very nice to come away with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. Now, tell us about auctions. What's the value of having an auction in your opinion?
Well, there's lots of benefits. Let's start with the sellers. So for a seller who's selling their home by auction, they could get to set all the terms and conditions of the contract. So what they want their settlement date to be, what they want their deposit to be. And then importantly, it's a cash unconditional contract, which at the moment is great. It means that once it's signed, you're not waiting on 3 to 4 weeks of finance for something to potentially not even come together. You have security and consistent timeframes. It's a great way to get all the buyers in a competitive environment to get them against each other, because we know that competition is the best way to get owners a really good price. And for your buyer, it's really nice because it's a transparent buying process, unlike what we have most commonly at the moment with the multiple offers, where you don't know what your competition's bid and you've got to put forward an offer not knowing anything. Yep. You have security going in on auction day knowing you're on the same level as everybody else. Yep. You can see your competition, you know what they're offering, and you know exactly what you need to do to get the property.
So are you seeing an increase in auctions? I know obviously mainland states, significant a number of auctions. In Tasmania, not as popular. Just 44 auctions across the state in the last 12 months in Tasmania. What sort of areas, I suppose, lend themselves to being good auction areas?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, typically, it's our high-end suburbs, if you like. Traditionally, what is seen as our good auction suburbs, because you've got very affluent buyers with a bit of cash to spend, and the land value is really high, which attracts good competition. But interestingly enough, the highest suburb was Ulverston, of all places across the state, for the last year, and that's with 4 auctions. But then you've got areas like East Launceston, Launceston Inner City, Sandy Bay. Yep. Those sort of areas always attract good auction results.
And what about a particular property? What sort of property lends itself to being one for an auction?
Well, there's no set criteria, but I like to think they sort of fall into a couple categories. So the first of all is those ones that are in those high-end areas. They always attract good competition because there's not a very high turnover and people know how good the property is and the land value is. Properties that need a good reno, they're always great. Something that you can add value to. If it needs a reno, if it's got a big block of dirt that you could subdivide or further develop, lots of potential to upsell. That always brings in good competition. And then just homes that appeal to lots of buyer demographics. So you might have, your everyday sort of home, but if it's good for investors, first home buyers, downsizers, small families, there's so many different kinds of buyers that want that home. So that creates a good level of competition.
And for those buyers, let's give them some handy tips. What do they need to be aware of and prepared for when they start putting up their hand bidding?
Yeah, it can be a bit daunting, especially if it's your first auction. Yeah. I suppose importantly, the big thing is that you are bidding cash unconditionally. So it means you don't have a finance clause or a building inspection clause. All that has to be done prior to auction. So it's really important that when you find the property at auction that you want to buy, that you begin your inquiry straight away. Do your due diligence, get your building inspector through, make sure you're working with a really good broker so that you feel comfortable on auction day, ready to make good, strong bids. And on that, there's a few tips there. Often it's the person who makes the opening bid who's the one who gets the keys at the end of the day. There's a bit of strategy involved with, intimidating your competition a little bit, being a presence. So it's just important to be really prepared and knowledgeable going in. And just one other tip, often buyers at auction, they'll go, my maximum's a round number, like 450, for example. But often you'll find that there might be 3 other buyers whose maximum number is 450. So you might find if you can scrounge an extra 2-3 grand off your parents and make it 453, or perhaps that's that next benchmark that gets you over your competition.
The good old bank of mum and dad. Thank you so much for that, Conall. We appreciate your time for us today. Conall Cassidy there from Harcourts Launceston.